Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 325, The Old Root and Herb Doctor. Link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books blogs. It is a good work. It's fairly short, 73 pages, but kind of dense. This is another herbal. It's sort of like Slack's herbal, the last one that I released. This one is shorter, but it contains some interesting content. Actually, some of it's kind of unique for works of the period. It's from the Thomsonian medical backdrop, so keep in mind, it pretends to be like Indian lore, like, oh, the local root doctors taught me this and stuff. That's a marketing gimmick. To be clear, this is purely European diaspora. This is the Thomsonian method. It has nothing to do with Native American medicine, so we'll get that out of the way first. That's for marketing. What it does, though, is it contains several sections that are kind of unique. It has the normal materia medica, so a list of species, and their various effects. And it has the normal list of diseases and how to cure them, and various preparations. And it has dosages and stuff. Much like with Slack's herbal and some of the other better herbals, it can actually be used as a guide to create like ointments and elixirs and pills and wraps and powders and stuff. So that part, you know, if you're into the apothecarian side of things, like if you're a crazy Hedgewiccan hippie or something, you're like, well, I only use herbal medicine. Oh, you've got the work for you right here. Disclaimer, I'm not telling you that you should actually use any of the medicines in here. Some of them are kind of toxic or narcotic in nature, and some of the ingredients at this point actually illegal. But it contains two unique sections. One that I haven't seen in any other comparable herbal, which is it has a few pages. It actually talks about the digestion time and the relative nutritional content, like energy availability, of different common foodstuffs. So like brown bread and white bread, trout and beef and flour and stuff, corn, beans, some of the things that were commonly eaten back then, and like the digestion list is pretty long. Like they even break up like hard-boiled and soft-boiled eggs are listed separately on it, so it's kind of interesting. Again, I haven't seen that before in an herbal work. And by the way, that's kind of a tip-off to the fact that it wasn't written by Mesoamericans, just to be clear. The other part is actually a list of poisons and their antidotes. Again, I've seen that touched upon in some of the home receipt guides, but mostly that sort of inclusion is later, like the very, very tail end of the 19th you start getting that, but really into the 20th century, as herbal works that were more Thomsonian like this start to get more standardized, and you see a lot more cookbook material going in. And like a modern-day cookbook or a recipe book is essentially just the evolution of herbals like this. And these are just the evolution of grimoires from a century or two earlier. Like bric-a-brac works is the missing link, like the Petit Albert, Homan's powwows from the early 1800s. Really, those are the missing link between spell books that happen to include herbal content through actual herbals to, you know, books like this that are basically medical guides containing herb lore, and then later with cookery and sewing tips and things like that. It's an astonishing and incredible evolution for these sort of home physician domestic guides, which is what you could call them. But the poisons and their antidotes, it's very interesting because if you look through, it's basically a list of things that small children may accidentally ingest and what to do. Most of the time it involves either inducing vomiting or a stomach pump. And of course, you're not recommended to do that with all poisons now. We know that sometimes causing the person to vomit is not a good idea. And of course, the average person does not have a stomach pump on hand, just to be clear. But that being said, that's what it actually pertains to. The materia medica is intermediate in length, but quite good. Also, I noted, with regards to several of the latter sections, they're not alphabetical like some parts are. And the reason why, I think, because of the number of grammatical errors that I had to correct in this work, I have a feeling this was hastily edited by the author themselves, or possibly unedited. Like it was just written, it was laid out, they didn't bother to check the plates before pressing it because they would have been using a manual press at the time in the middle of the 19th century, and they didn't really check for grammar. Of course, a lot of people back then were illiterate, so it wouldn't have mattered if there were a few typos, but they were there. So I think the editing job initially wasn't even technically complete. I'm the first person to, I guess, properly edit this work. So congrats to me, I suppose, on this one. It is a really good work. It is highly recommended, definitely a good herbal. The poison section, I think, really takes the cake, though, because, again, mostly you're waiting 3 or 4 more decades before you get that kind of inclusion in what could be basically considered a proto-domestic guide. So again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links to my books, blogs, highly recommended. That's about all. Peace out.